I've taken mainly TED Talks where people are illustrating these properties, and this is really just to give you an idea of what it looks like in action. You don't have to copy anyone. If you're asking rhetorical questions or startling facts, it will look and feel very different. Okay, so we're going to go through, I did give you that Word document of all the different opens and closes. A good exercise to do is to go through every single one of them, or at least maybe 4 of them, and say, if I was going to open my speech using this, how would it feel like? Because you always think, and I find people always go, oh, this first one feels like it will work. But if you persist and go through it, you get to the 3rd or 4th one and go, actually, this one's much better. So don't just assume your first one is going to be the one you should do. Okay. And you can even just do it in your head kind of thing. Like if I was going to do a startling fact, what would it be? And see if that resonates. But on that note, we are going to get going. And I am going to share my screen. If I can get back to Zoom. And we're going to just go through some of these examples of how you could open or close a presentation. Okay. So we're going to look at these 13. There is a lot, but it does also give you a lot of options to see which one is really going to work for yours. So the first thing I want to look at is opening and closing with a rhetorical question. If you need to comment or ask me anything, can you please interrupt, because I can't always see what's happening on the screen, or if your hand is raised, because I've got too much stuff open. So if you start by asking a question, and I'm please asking you not to tell the audience to raise their hand or shout out or turn to the person next to them. Most people don't really appreciate that particularly much, especially in the kind of theater setting that we are sitting in. It's really not that kind of business thing. But when you ask someone a question or you ask an audience, they actually visualize it in their heads, the answer, which means you're actually engaging with them. And when you ask a question, people very seldom can resist to answer it. Like if I ask everyone, what would you do if you won the lotto? Everyone automatically starts asking it in their heads. So this is a very, very effective way of opening a presentation. I'm going to play Simon Sinek from his TED Talk, How Great Leaders Impose Action. He is quite exceptional in this setup in that he asks around about 22 rhetorical questions, but just have a look at how effective Simon Sinek is when he's asking rhetorical questions to start his presentation.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve.
So can you see what he's doing? He's setting you up to give the answers in his talk. This is a very effective way of opening or closing a presentation. It's something, even if you are telling a personal story, you could ask questions to the audience. The better way of doing it is to ask questions that will make people think. Okay, this may not fit into everyone's talk. We can also discuss it when we have the one-on-one. So that is one way, very good for business talks actually, is you asking
So,
people, yes,
Terry, so you're saying you don't want the audience to raise their hand
no,
or gesture or do anything. And I see
no,
Simon saying, because he runs a whole lot of questions, right? So that
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
get time to put your hand up. But
yeah.
we've got one question. The question is, have you ever felt like an imposter? So then do we just pause and
Yeah.
let that bake and you don't ask for a show of hands?
No, but definitely you must let it pause, because if like Simon, you just keep going, no one has time to think of that answer actually. So
Mm.
yeah, ask your question, pause, but yeah, I've just found the response from the audience when you say raise your hand at Pecha Kucha is particularly poor, and there's nothing worse than saying to people raise your hand and nobody bothers. So rather do the rhetorical where they answer it in their head, but you're giving them a pause so that they can still answer it in their head.
Got it.
Okay, perfect. So that's one method. We're going to move on to a different one now. And yeah, if you watch any of these full videos, you can also jump to the end to see how he closes off his TED talk.
Powered man flight in the right.
Okay. The other one is to open or close with a contrast or a challenge. Now, this is actually particularly effective because what it does is it shows, first of all, it shows confidence, but it actually forces the audience into some kind of emotional alignment with you. So it demands presence, you priming emotion, and it's a very strong way to open. So there's immediate, this is kind of a raw directiveness that commands attention and empathy, basically. So I know we all know Greta Thunberg, like her or dislike her. Her famous talk in the United Nations in 2019, the How Dare You, that was such a direct challenge to the audience, which is why people remember that opening. Okay, and what you're trying to do is make your talk memorable. Okay, so let's have a look at darling Greta.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be back
Sorry, I'm just going to put some volume on there.
in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood.
Okay, so that is her challenge to the audience. Very direct, very in your face. Like, how dare you steal my childhood? I should be at school. Very effective. It's quite provocative, but depending on your topic, it could work very, very well. A lot of politicians use this. Unfortunately, a lot of salespeople use this as well, but it's an effective technique to open because once again, you're trying to get people to remember your talk. Okay. Let's move on to open or close with a compelling story, painting a word picture. This is a fantastic way to open any talk, a business talk, a sales talk, a Pecha Kucha talk. When you are using your words to paint a picture in someone's mind, human beings, we are geared and primed towards storytelling. So if you use this and people can imagine what you're talking about, it is very, very effective. Now, I want you to have a look at Rick Ellis, also TED Talk, how he uses sounds, how he uses repetition, And he's very calm when he talks. He talks in very a matter of fact, but this is also one of the most watched TED Talks. So this is about him telling a story, but he's evoking images and he's asking questions of the audience as well, and getting you to imagine if you were in his situation. Very effective way. And none of these ways I'm showing you, you can use bits of them. Like you could use a challenge and a rhetorical question and a story. It's not like they standalone things. Okay, so look at Rick Ellis.
So imagine a big explosion as you climb through 3,000.
So I want you to think about the word imagine. When he says imagine, you are already with him and you are going to start to imagine. I'm just going to take that back a little bit. Imagine is a very powerful thing to say to an audience. Imagine you were lying on a coral beach and you looked up and there was a tsunami. It kind of gets our minds into storytelling mode. Okay, so he starts with his very strong words, imagine.
So imagine a big explosion as you climb through 3,000 feet. Imagine a plane full of smoke. Imagine an engine going clack, 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 clack. Sounds scary. Well, I had a unique seat that day. I was sitting in 1D. I was the only one who could talk to the flight attendants. So I looked at them right away, and they said, no problem. We probably hit some birds. The pilot had already turned the plane around, and we weren't that far. You could see Manhattan. 2 minutes later, 3 things happened at the same time. The pilot lines up the plane with the Hudson River. It's usually not the route. He turns off the engines. Now imagine being on a plane with no sound. And then he says 3 words, as unemotional 3 words as I've ever heard. He says, brace for impact.
Okay. Do you want to hear the rest of his story? Can you see how he sets you up? And he does like the rule of 3, like 3 things happen. He does the sound of the engine, but he says to you, imagine this happened to you. Imagine you were on the seat. Imagine you were on a plane with no sound. He's pulling you into his story. A very effective way to tell stories is to get people to feel like they are there with you. Okay, so that's opening or closing with a story, painting a word picture. None of these are excessively difficult to do, but you just have to sit and focus and work on it. The next thing, also very effective, is to open or close with a surprising or alarming fact or statistic. Don't tell people something they know. Don't stand up and say, South Africa is the crime capital of the world. That doesn't grab anyone. We've heard it. We have fatigue. We don't care anymore. But if you said, I don't know, there are more trees in South Africa than there are stars in the sky, you'll get people to listen because you are interrupting what people are expecting. And when you interrupt what they're expecting, they tend to sit up and listen. And what we're trying to do is get people to buy into your talk from the very first words that you say. The other thing I want you to look at is, this is Jamie Oliver, you know him, the chef from the UK. You can see that he is nervous. It is patently obvious that he's nervous. Here's notes, Kirsty, as to your question. In fact, he's a bit irritating with him. He slaps his notes against his hands a few times, but then you can see he settles into his talk. But he won an award for this talk, so even if you're nervous, it doesn't mean that you can't deliver a good talk. And that's what you need to separate in your mind. You can be as nervous as hell and the audience will still love your story. Don't just say, oh, I'm nervous, so I'm going to deliver a terrible talk. Tell yourself the opposite. Hey, nerves means I'm going to deliver an amazing talk. So listen to how he opens his talk. Look at his body language. See if you can spot what nerves he has, and then see the point where he starts to settle down.
Sadly, in the next 18 minutes when I do our chat, 4 Americans that are alive will be dead through the food that they eat.
Okay, so that's his startling fact. Sadly, in the next 18 minutes while we do our little chat, 4 Americans will be dead from the food that they eat. That is such an attention-grabbing thing that you can really use with your own story, with your own kind of facts. But just watch him now with his pacing and his notes and his nerves very much on display.
My name's Jamie Oliver. I'm 34 years old. I'm from Essex in England. And for the last 7 years, I've worked fairly tirelessly to save lives in my own way. I'm not a doctor. I'm a chef. I don't have expensive equipment or medicine. I use information, education. I profoundly believe that the power of food has a primal place in our homes that binds us to the best bits of life.
Can you hear the passion in his voice as well when he's talking about, I deeply believe that, but could you see he was nervous? I paced around the stage, how he was hitting his notes, and then he got to the front and he calmed down. The other thing at PK68 is it is a fixed mic. You can't wander around the stage because there's also fixed spotlights. So you're going to stand and deliver, okay? Unlike other business talks, or if you're a Toastmasters, where they insist that you use your stage, this is not that kind of a talk, okay? So any kind of startling statistic or fact that is going to kind of wake up the audience, something they weren't expecting to learn about or to hear about. Obviously, your opening must be in line with your story. You're going to stand up and give them a fact that's got nothing to do with what you're going to be talking about. But right from the beginning, his words about 4 people will die while I'm doing this speech draws the audience in and it makes them think. Okay, now we're going to look at opening with a big idea. So this is telling people right up front what your idea is, instead of, you know, quite often in speeches, we make the audience work quite hard to know what we're going to talk about. He comes up right up front with his statement, why you're going to fail to have a great career. So he shares his idea up front. He intrigues the audience because we don't actually believe his statement, but we clued up right from the start of where we are going with this. So this is Larry Smith. This was a TEDx talk that actually got pulled up to become a TED talk as well.
Thank you. I want to discuss with you this afternoon why you're going to fail to have a great career. I'm an economist. I do dismal. End of the day, it's ready for dismal remarks. I only want to talk to those of you who want a great career. I know some of you have already decided you want a good career. You're going to fail too, because, goodness, you're all cheery about failing. Canadian group, undoubtedly. Those trying to have good careers are going to fail because really good jobs are now disappearing. There are great jobs and great careers, and then there are the high workload, high stress, blood-sucking, soul-destroying kinds of jobs.
Okay, so right up front, he's intriguing the audience. You know what he's going to talk about. He's not trying to be, well, he is trying to be clever, but he's really throwing it out there almost with his first words. You're not going to have a great career. You're not even going to have a good career. Okay, so right up front, he's sharing it. There's no mystery in what he's going to say.
Thank you.
And once again, these are just examples to inspire you to see how you can open or close. And remember, everything that we're using as an open, you can use as a close. You can end with your big idea again. Then we're going to look at opening or closing with a power of three or repeating statements. There's lots of repeating statements that we remember from history from years ago. I came, I saw, I conquered. Julius Caesar, how many is it? 2,000 years old. Everybody knows that because it was the rule of three. Three things: blood, sweat, and tears, general pattern. We often remember things in groups of three. We're going to look at that a little bit next week. The government of the people, by the people, for the people. It is just a way of structuring your words that helps people remember it. So here is the Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. This was in 1963, and I don't think there's a person on planet Earth who, if you said, I had a dream, wouldn't know what you're talking about. I just want to show you how powerful this repetition tool is, that if you use it in your open or your close, people will remember what you are talking about.
That all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream.
Okay, so anytime you repeat anything in your talk, people will tend to remember it. I'm going to stop that for 1 second. I did a talk with an estate agent 2 or 3 years ago, and she said, I will sell your house for the best price in the fastest time, with the least amount of hassle. And she said that at the start of every single paragraph, and it was her last words and her first words. It was like for an ad she did. But she told me for months and years afterwards, people would go up to her and go, oh, you will sell my house for the best price in the fastest time with the least amount of hassle. So people remember what you repeat. Okay, so it is a way, once again, probably more for business, but for stories. And these are quite subtle things. There was a speaker last time who used this technique. She had a very hard upbringing, and she used it at the start of every sentence, but it's of every paragraph, but it sounded very natural. Didn't sound like, oh, now I'm doing a repetition. So the other one that we all remember, even though it is years and years old as well, is we will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them in the air. We will fight them. You know the one I'm talking about? Churchill.
No.
And once again, all he's done is do repeating statements. We will fight them. We will fight them. We will fight them. So very, very strong way to get people to remember what your talk is about. One of the TEDx's that I did in Cape Town, you know the fire thing, stop, drop, and roll. There was a lady who was talking about the damage of social media to teenagers, and she said, stop. What did she say? Stop, drop, stop the scroll, or stop, drop the scroll, I think. But she said that often in her talk as well, and it stuck with people afterwards. I heard in the interval they were all going to her and going, stop, drop the scroll, because she did a play on that. The other thing is a sound bite. If you start with something that people recognize, like, okay, we know what Trump is going to say. This is not a political talk, but if you use the Nike thing, just do it, or from the American Idols, that'll be a yes for me, or one small step for man, one giant step for mankind. What you're trying to do is give your audience comfort with a phrase that they know, and then you're using it a little bit in an unexpected way. But if I started tonight and I said to you, let's make Petra great again, you would have all had a bit of a smile on your face because you know where it's coming from. Okay. And you can do something similar with a sound bite that people know about. And if you remember that TV ad from flippin' years ago when the guy's looking for Cremora and the wife says to him, it's not inside, it's on top. That's a sound bite. People will remember that. And you can use those effectively in your talks. Okay, so here's the famous sound bite. Or not.
Sadly, the American dream is dead. But if I get elected president, I will bring it back bigger and better and stronger than ever before.
Just look at his rule of three. Bigger, better, stronger. A very, very powerful way to talk in a speech. Don't overuse it, and please don't use ChatGPT because it'll do a power of three in every flippant sentence for you. But it's powerful when you hear it, actually. Okay.
And we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that's a sound bite. It is a very effective way, again, of opening or closing your speech. And if you don't have a familiar sound bite, you can make a sound bite that when people leave, they will say that sound bite to each other. Like I did with the estate agent. Okay, so when I started speaking, I used to often open with a quotation because I didn't know how to open. It's very powerful to use other people's beautiful words. Okay, 100% fine to start with a quotation or song lyrics or a poem, as long as you acknowledge them. Okay. You're not trying to pretend it's your own words. You're letting them know that it's someone else's words. So this is just Justin Trudeau when he did his victory speech. Okay, this is a while back. But he was using the band Tragically Hip, which was a Canadian band. And in his victory speech, he quoted from their song. So also a powerful way of, I mean, if you didn't know the Sunny Ways by Tragically Hip, it probably went above your head. But it's not a bad thing to use a quote, okay? Because someone else's words can actually encapsulate what you're trying to say. Just remember to acknowledge them.
Un vrai changement. Sunny ways, my friends, sunny ways.
Okay, that's the quote from the song. Can you see the crowd recognizes it? Okay, I think the girls voted for him for a different reason, but anyway. Okay. I've seen people use this very, very effectively. Comedians often do this. If something happened in the news that day, then they will start their talk or their comedy show with what was in the news today. Remember when Eskom was in trouble, everyone's speech referenced Eskom. But you can also look on this day in history, the first public speech was ever done. There's lots of research you can do around that. Or if you look on the 12th of March, maybe it's National Cupcake Day or National Beer Day. But you can use those kind of things if you're not quite sure where to start. So this is Bill Gates in 2015 doing a TED Talk. Very interesting given what happened in 2019 or 2020 with COVID, but he's talking about the next outbreak. We're not ready. quite scary. But what he's really doing, you'll see when he opens his speech, he's positioning it in a time in history, okay, which is something you could do as well. And you can applaud.
When I was a kid, the disaster we worried about most was a nuclear war. That's why we had a barrel like this down in our basement, filled with cans of food and water. When the nuclear attack came, we were supposed to go downstairs, hunker down, and eat out of that barrel. Today, the greatest risk.
Okay. So did you see he's taken people back in time to when he was a kid and the nuclear threat was there. So he's anchoring his talk in time and space. So he carried on actually talking about a virus that will attack. Very interesting speech to watch with 2020 vision, actually. But an effective way of doing it is taking people back in a time. And when you kind of say the things when I was a kid, what does everyone do? They were imagining when they were a kid. Okay. Okay, number 10, we've only got 3 to go. Okay, full circle, close by repeating something from the opening. So this is Chimamanda, also a very famous speech, this TED Talk. She starts by talking about stories and she ends by talking about stories. So it kind of signals to the audience that you're coming to a close. So I've downloaded a little bit of her open, and then I've typed in there close and then her close. So you can see how she ties her open and her close, but not difficult to do. I sometimes do a talk where I open with a quote by a certain person, and then I close with a different quote, but by the same person. So it makes this kind of rounded thing that happens. Okay, the start.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus.
Okay, so she says, I'm a storyteller.
For all the people who are eager to tell our many stories. Stories matter. Many stories matter. Stories have been used to dispossess and to malign, but stories can also be used to empower and to humanize. Stories can break the dignity of a people, but stories can also repair that broken dignity. The American...
Okay, so she started saying, I'm a storyteller, and I'm going to tell you about the dangers of a single story, and I'm going to share my stories. She goes through story, 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 and then she ends by telling you about stories again. Very nice way of putting a bow on your speech. Okay, so then there's humor, and humor, I think we all know, if you can get humor right and you can get the audience to laugh, it is fantastic. If you get it wrong, you're sunk your boat. And remember, humor, we don't mean stand up and tell a joke, okay? You're not Barry Hilton. You cannot be racist, ageist, sexist, fattest, anything-ist, but you can use humor in clever ways. So this is not a TED Talk. This is a Toastmasters speech, Mohammed Quatani. Look at the title of his talk and look at how he opened his talk, because he uses humor in a very, very clever way. You'll just have to go through the Toastmasters introduction of how they always do it.
Please welcome our next contestant, Mohammed Quatani, The Power of Words. The Power of Words, Mohammed Quatani.
What? Oh, you all think smoking kills?
Okay, so his talk was called The Power of Words. He started off with no words. He also does a challenge to the audience. He obviously wasn't intending on lighting the cigarette, and he does the what? Actually, almost quite rude, but he got the audience on his side because it was unexpected what he did. They laughed, they had humor. He won the contest that year, and I personally believe it was from his opening. And we're talking about 30 seconds of your talk, just to do something that's going to wake your audience up. Okay, this definitely a thing that used to be a business thing. Tell them what you are going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. Okay, so that's kind of, tonight I'm going to talk about ways of opening and closing a speech. Then we're going to go through the ways, and then right at the end, I'm going to summarize and say, this is how you open and close a speech. So this guy, in fact, I really like Julian. He does a lot of public speaking videos and stuff. But just listen how he sets up to tell them what he's going to tell them. Also TED Talk.
The human voice. It's the instrument we all play. It's the most powerful sound in the world, probably. It's the only one that can start a war or say, I love you. And yet many people have the experience that when they speak, people don't listen to them. Why is that? How can we speak powerfully to make change in the world? What I'd like to suggest, there are a number of habits that we need to move away from. I've assembled for your pleasure here 7 deadly sins of speaking. I'm not pretending this is an exhaustive list, but these 7, I think, are pretty large. Habits that we can all fall into. First, gossip. Speaking ill of somebody who's not present. Not a nice habit, and we know perfectly well the person gossiping 5 minutes later will be gossiping about us. Second, judging. We know people who are like this in conversation, and it's very hard to listen to somebody if you know that you're being judged and found wanting at the same time. Third, negativity. You can fall into this. My mother, in the last years of her life, became very, very negative, and it's hard to listen. I remember one day I said to her, it's October the 1st today, and she said, I know, isn't it dreadful? It's hard to listen when somebody's that negative. And another form of negativity, complaining. Well, this is the national art of the UK. It's our national sport. We complain about the weather, about sport, about politics, about everything. But actually complaining is viral misery. It's not spreading.
Okay, so what he does is he goes on and he shares the 7 deadly sins. Then the rest of his talk is about how to actually not do them. And then at the end, he summarizes it all up again. So he's really doing, tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. Okay, and our very last one is props. Once again, Bill Gates, he loves props, but he uses them particularly well. If you are going to use a prop specifically at Pecha Kucha, make sure that the prop is adding to your talk and is not distracting. Okay. It is not about having a prop. Most people don't. If you can find a prop or a hat or something that, I mean, for your prop, literally you've got your images behind them, but we're not opposed to using props. This was also a TED Talk by Bill Gates. Probably the most effective use of a prop I've ever seen in my...
For example, there's more money put into baldness drugs than are put into malaria. Now, baldness it's a terrible thing. And rich men are afflicted. And so that's why that priority has been set. But malaria, even the 1 million deaths a year caused by malaria, greatly understate its impact. Over 200 million people at any one time are suffering from it. It means that you can't get the economies in these areas going because it holds things back so much. Now, malaria is, of course, transmitted by mosquitoes. I brought some here so you could experience this. We'll let those roam around the auditorium a little bit. There's no reason only poor people should have the experience.
Okay, so he literally let mosquitoes go into the hall. Got the audience laughing twice for the affliction with bald. Rich men also get bald, and then like whatever. So a very effective use of a prop that actually increased the value of his speech. So just to go through these again, rhetorical question, you're asking them a question, you're giving them the time to answer it. Challenge your contrast right up front. You're saying to people, how dare you? Okay, compelling story, beautiful way to start a speech, surprising or alarming fact, very, very good way of doing it. Opening with a big idea, the power of 3 repeating statements, sound bites, a quotation, a song, a lyric, a place in time. Bill Gates took us back to when he was a kid, going full circle. I am a storyteller, da 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 da, and then talking about stories at the end. Humor, Mohammed Quatani pretending to light a cigarette with his title, The Power of Words, not using them. The summary, tell you what you're going to tell you, and the use of props. So I just